You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series.
Hello, and welcome to the finals of Week 1 here in Season 4 of the Eternal Tournament Series. I am Truedawn, as always, joined by my wonderful co-host, LocoPojo.
Welcome, folks. We're going into the last round, Hythar versus Unearthly. So we're going to see Big Combre matching up against this Rakano plate deck, which has totally captivated me. I'm really pleased with how the overall flying and quick draw approach to this, the little tiny differences that make this deck really fascinating. So we're going to be seeing that against a much slower Combre deck, and we're going to see which wins out in the end.
Yep, and the testament to these two decks is, we talked about it earlier, the difference between a good deck and a great deck is having a cohesive 90 cards, and both of these decks have a cohesive 90 cards. They can both augment the speed of their deck with the sideboard, they can change their threat density, they have answers to whatever they need. So both of these decks are able to really change what they're trying to do and the speed of what they're trying to do via the sideboard. And when you're able to do that, it's just the hallmark of a very good deck.
Yep, there are no decays in Hythar's sideboard, which is interesting. I think overall it should turn out fine for him. The decays are generally kind of bad against Unearthly's particular version of Rakano Plate anyways, with all of the Aegises. But he is going to have some problems with the bigger units, basically finding a way to get through anything that stacks up a lot of weapons. So that's going to be an interesting hurdle for him to overcome.
I think Hythar's most important card is Harsh Rule. Unearthly's build is a little bit cold to Harsh Rule. Obviously, there's Silver Familiar that does have insulation from that, but if he's forced to go in on any of the other cards, then it's going to be a problem. He also has a bevy of ways to remove the Aegis and set up a Harsh Rule. So I do think that Hythar has game. I would rather have Harsh Rule than Decay. We've seen many times today Unearthly's opponents have a Decay in hand that just sits there dead, or there's no problem way for them to use it. So I think that it's not the worst thing in the world that he doesn't have access to that. He certainly still has tools to compete here as we move into game 1.
All right. Yeah, we've got Rakano banners and seats versus, got set up with a Tinker Overseer on 2 for Unearthly. And from there, he'll be able to move into that Deep Forge Plate, which is certainly an important card for him. But he does want to see a few more 2-drops to push against Hythar and get some of that early damage in to make the plate more relevant.
And this, it's pretty anemic hand by Unearthly. Having the 2 Vanquishes to deal with whatever proactivity Hythar has is pretty good, but only 1 threat and probably one of your worst creatures at that is really not what you like to see. He certainly has a lot of time to draw out of this and draw additional threats, but as it stands right now, this Tinker might not be enough.
Yeah, Temple Scribe is a little bit of extra health. And with the Seraph, he's got to be able to push down a little bit more. But basically, Unearthly's just sort of looking for a little bit better answers. That Shogun Scepter is a really strong choice because puts it on the Tinker Overseer. It will get vanquished, but he'll get the extra unit that he needs, and he'll get some War Cries, which are...
Yeah, that's why Shogun Scepter is one of the better weapons in the game, in my opinion, is it just gets a bunch of value even when they have the removal immediately. This is going to do 2 damage, a War Cry, have an Oni Ronin left after. So you still got a bunch of value, still considering the fact that it's going to get immediately killed.
Yeah, it's a very strong card. It measures a really nice balance between board advantage in terms of increasing the size of your unit, late game advantage in increasing the size of the cards in your deck, and card advantage in creating you that extra card and making it so that your opponent has to spend a card to deal with only half of the Shogun Scepter. And yeah, turns out to be working pretty well for Unearthly. Unearthly now has to decide whether he's going to play the Emerald Monument or the Fire Sigil, but with 2 Deep Forge Plates in hand, that's a pretty easy choice.
Yeah, definitely. And it's really, these Deep Forge Plates are going to be a big problem. The first one is going to get tagged, and then Unearthly does need to draw another creature. So it's possible he bricks for a while, and then Hythar is able to, stabilize, but as it stands currently, Unearthly needs to draw another creature.
Yeah, so Desert Marshal helps out a little bit here. Certainly prevents the first Deep Forge Plate from getting 2 out of hand. He could Desert Marshal here to prevent the Overwhelm and Chump Block, or he could just vanquish this and basically be done with it. I think Unearthly is kind of a... Marshal is actually entirely the wrong choice, so using the Vanquish here is 100% correct, but with the information that Hythar has, it's easy to make a different choice. Desert Marshal still a really good card against the Deep Forge Blade. I think Hyther's got pretty good answers to Unearthly's deck.
Yeah, it certainly panned out pretty well. Unearthly didn't draw a creature there. These threats aren't vanquishable, although this Mystic Ascendant will be. But we are past the point of that mattering. The Seraph is going to take over the game. So Unearthly used to draw a creature immediately. That unfortunately is not one of those. And now it's unlikely that he's going to be able to get a creature in time and not die to whatever Seraph so happens to vomit out.
Yeah, this is the Rakano nightmare, really. Just sort of not having any unit stock full of weapons. It's one of the central weaknesses of an Earth deck. And it looks like going
I
for
like
the
it.
Parliament.
Got to send a message. Yep, so that will be the end of the road for Unearthly here in Game 1. We will be moving to Game 2 pretty quickly, considering there is no sideboard. Hopefully players remember this time. We both got to the finals this far. Yeah. I assume so.
Parliament of Owls definitely pushed across enough to make sure that he could win. Or Stare of Owls, as
we learned.
It's a rookery of albatrosses.
His
aggregation of alligators.
LocoPojo spent the whole break learning what you call various groups of animals, so he will impart that knowledge to you.
So we've got Find the Way here and Martial Ironthorn and Mystic Ascendant. That's not really an ideal hand for Hyther, but it's possible that he might be able to pull something out of it. These first two games are pretty crucial because, like, once again, like if you get rolled by Rakano in the first two games, then you have a lot harder time once the sideboards come in of preventing that last one round from going in. But Hyther's already won one, so if he can secure the second one, I think he's got a very good chance of just forcing Unearthly to get unlucky in even one game. So regardless of how good the sideboards are, if he wins this one, he's very well favored to win the rest of them.
Unfortunately for Hyther, though, Unearthly has an exceptionally good draw. He's just already on a 5-turn clock from turn 3. This Titan's not coming down till next turn, although the Titan is a good draw. It gives him something to do. Unearthly is just going to be hitting for so much damage. Rakano Outlaw is also a great draw there.
Yeah, unfortunately, Sandstorm Titan doesn't seem to be a super impressive play here. It is nice because it does actually prevent damage from the Champion of Glory, but it's pretty hard for Hyther to put that down and just try to block a quick draw unit, and there's always the chance that now and then. Once he gets Sandstorm Titan down, he can start holding down the fort a little bit, but he really has to basically like be in a position to defend against Unearthly's everything, and Unearthly's got a lot of stuff that he can play through.
Yeah, I think you still attack here if you're Unearthly. You lose the champion, but actually this is close. So
you lose the champion and gain 5 damage, but the champion is also just such a...
You gain a bunch of Warcry too. Like gaining 4 Warcry is worth a lot, or 3 Warcry rather. Sorry. Because the Warcry you just saw one in the Turncoat Overseer, so you know it's not all going into one thing. It's just going to get vanquished. You're diversifying. So I do like attacking here, getting the 5 damage, getting the 3 Warcry, following up with another creature.
Yeah, and Overseer is like a really nasty creature too because it has that flying ability, so it will be able to push through and threaten. He's going for the Silverwing Familiar instead, which I'm not sure I agree with quite as much. Not a bad card here, but so much extra damage.
I think the upside of this is that if Unearthly top deck is a power, it's the better card to plate, and he would really want to plate on turn 5. So I guess that's the argument for it. It also like doesn't really matter playing the bigger creature because there's still the Titan that you can't really contest currently. So
yeah, if you played up the Rakano Outlaw instead of the Silverwing Familiar, then it does lead to you getting harsh ruled. Harsh rules,
yeah.
They're not in a sideboard, so...
Well, there's some Tinkers. Probably just going to see these extended out. Well, he only extended out 1. That's interesting. He is pretty concerned about harsh rule. But now we're getting to the point where Hyther is just going to get to go Ironthorn, play power, Mystic Ascendant, draw 2. Like this game is going to snowball out of control very, very quickly, and we're kind of arriving to the point where plate isn't good anymore. Hyther just has so much toughness in play.
With the Deep Forge plate, the Rakano Outlaw can still attack this turn because it will deal 8 and kill all but one thing, which will mean that it'll only take 5. But beyond that, it's pretty rough. Like, it will leave the Sandstorm Titan alive, which is not what you want, and it's still going to be pretty hard for Unearthly to push.
We do see Hythar elect to use the Vanquish there, which now paves the way for the plate. Scepter, unfortunately, is not big enough. Even on the Mercano Outlaw, it still can't attack through the Titan, so...
Yeah, I might put it on the Rakano Outlaw anyway, since you're just trying to push through a little bit of extra damage, but it's rough.
Yeah,
Like,
we're now at the point where Hythar is starting to stabilize. I think he might be fully stabilized. The one thing that Unearthly can draw to get out of this is a way to deal with Sandstorm Titan, but that has to be this turn because now Hythar has a Scorpion Wasp.
yeah, if he... Okay,
Oh,
he
well,
can silence
it's this
the
turn.
Mystic Ascendant. It gives him 5 damage, which is pretty solid. Or not the Mystic Ascendant, the Sandstorm Titan. Or he could silence the Mystic Ascendant and try to go for the less optimal play of just trying to push through for damage later in the game. I think this is actually pretty solid.
Yeah, and this is actually great for Unearthly because he gets to attack this turn, and if he has so many flyers that he can actually just diversify it enough where the Scorpion Wasp can kill one of like 3 lethal creatures.
Despite having an exceptionally good board, Hythar might actually want to Harsh Roll next turn if he draws it off the Mystic Ascendant. Like,
He
the
does
threat
get
of D4's
3
plate is so
draws.
strong.
Yeah, he gets 3 looks at whatever. So he has. There's certainly a lot of things Hythar can draw to break up Unearthly's potential lethal next turn.
Yeah. Harsh Rule or the Parliament of Owls? The
Oh,
Blood of
Vanquish is not
Human
bad. Vanquish is actually pretty good.
Only gets rid of some of like the bigger threats, and I think this might put him out of the game though if he leaves out those flyers up on the board. Got Scorpion Wasp to deal with some of it. He's got Vanquish to deal with more of it. But with the yeah, I think he's actually dead. With Scorpion Wasp there, that's just not quite enough.
It's if he draws a power for plate, it's exactly lethal if he attacks with both.
He does have to draw an undepleted power, and that chance is not great. It's like 1 in 7, perhaps. It's not particularly high, because Unearthly has both banners and seats in his.
But there it is. We're going to just see plate on the Valkyrie. He'll think about this for a minute, see what he can play around, but I would be shocked if this turn ends with any other play than plate on Valkyrie, Jim in the air.
Have to go for it. You could put it on the Silvering Familiar if you wanted to, just to push a little extra damage in the air against Marshall. But either way, it's got to be this.
Well, the reason you don't want to do it this way is because now this is not lethal against Scorpion Wasp, because he just can block the 3/3 or the 6/6, or the 3/3 is the one that makes it not lethal. So that is why I would have preferred to put it on the Valkyrie.
Yeah, fair enough. Like, Hythar's now got another turn to play, so if Unearthly had
played... Well, no, he has Plague Wind. The Iron Thorn gets to ult this turn, closing it out.
Yeah, so Unearthly might have thrown that game. That actually... I
mean, it's not trivial combat math. There are things to consider. I think that it's better against Desert Marshal, but you're not winning the game against Desert Marshal, I don't think. Like, that's your last turn, Iron Thorn's ulting next turn. So I think you just have to play around what you can play around, put out in the Valkyrie. But we do get to go to sideboards. Unearthly has a bunch of time to, a few games to come back.
Yeah, it's certainly non-trivial. I definitely missed it. So pretty crazy stuff. So looks like we are going into the next round. Hythar has to do some sideboarding, so we'll be taking a little bit of time for that. And we'll see about Hythar's sideboards. Hythar's sideboards are a little bit unconventional compared to the other anti-Rakano sideboards that we've seen.
Yeah, he has some reasonable options in the form of Healer's Cloak, Steward of Prophecy is probably a little too slow. Reality Warden potentially is a blocker. I actually don't think there's going to be a lot of sideboarding taking place on the side of Hythar. The only things that really stick out to me that are very good are Healer's Cloak, potentially Awakened Student just as an early thing to play, and then the rest of the stuff is I could take it or leave it.
Yep. Like overall, he doesn't need to play an exceptional amount of stuff. Steward of Prophecy might be pretty good for silencing some of the cards that can really like be bad for him. Like there's a lot of cards that if he silences them, they become significantly less threatening.
Yeah,
Anything with quick draw, anything with flying, anything with Aegis, like
it's
basically
just
all of
the problem is like all that stuff comes down before Steward of Prophecy, and there's obviously some cases where they'll like have something in hand that they didn't play because they want to play weapons or whatever.
Yeah,
But
Unearthly's definitely been holding onto units just so that he doesn't get harsh ruled out. So there's the possibility that Steward of Prophecy comes into play. Pretty effective here, but it also represents a significant tempo loss. Tempo loss is really bad again. So I'm not sure if it's right to include it, but it would be an interesting card in the deck.
yeah, certainly. And on the side of Unearthly, looks like he already has his plan. He sideboarded pretty quick. He has access to things like Vanquish, Rebuke, Soulfire Drake, Jack. We've actually seen him sideboard this matchup before. He liked the Rebuke, the Jack, Soulfire Drake, and the Vanquish, I think, were the things that came in, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it looks like overall we have a pretty decent setup here. We've got Combray Healers coming in force. No Dawnwalkers for the Rakano matchup, which makes perfect sense. Reality Warden is definitely a card that looks like is going to be sticking around for today. And the Awakened students go down to 2.
Yep. So there's a lot of balancing, like you talked about before. There's a lot of cards you want like some number of. You still need to maintain your top end. So once you stabilize, you actually can turn the corner. So it's a delicate balance that we've been seeing Combray players navigate all day. And Hyler's obviously been doing a pretty good job because he's found himself in the finals. So just trying to figure out.
Looking to cut one extra card, he goes for the Temple Scribe, which is sort of the card that you cut when you can't think of any other card to cut. I'm not sure if it's right, but it might. So we'll see how it goes. The 2 Steward of Prophecies did in fact stay in, so we will see if those end up being useful against the Mono matchup.
Yep, and we will go here into game 3, and this is match point for Hythar, tournament point for Hythar, but Unearthly has the shot to battle back from an 0-2 deficit.
Can he take the finals? We are going to see Valkyrie Enforcer, Great Parliament, and Reality Warden. There's a lot of good things in this hand, but there's so much that could go wrong. The double green that he needs to play these cards makes it a difficult keep. Hythar does elect to keep it, so he could end up in a bit of trouble here.
Find the way does get him up to be able to cast all these things, but Hythar's not doing a heck of a whole lot for the next couple turns. He actually does have like the Valkyrie into the Great Parliament 4/4, but it's unclear if those cards are going to be big enough to contend with what Unearthly is presenting.
If he gets the double green here, he can't play it to play the Valkyrie, and the Valkyrie is certainly something he really needs to play next turn to get rid of that Rakano Outlaw. So from here, he might be in a bit of trouble. Unearthly's probably going to start running roughshod over him.
And this is actually a like pretty tough decision for Unearthly. He's debating whether or not he wants to play 2-drop and the Seek Power or the Scepter, and he does go with 2-drop Seek Power. I don't hate this. You like to get the Scepter out as quickly as you can, but there's actually reasonable upside to doing it this way, where if they play something like Valkyrie this turn, you can then play Scepter on the other creature instead of having Scepter be on a creature without quick draw, would have to trade into the Valkyrie.
Yep. Hythar looking at Valkyrie Enforcer still as his next play, or he could play out the Great Parliament and get himself a Parliament of Owls. I think overall he's just not looking great here. He gets to silence the champion, and that certainly gets a lot of potential damage out of his face, but Unearthly's still looking at a handful of just gas. So, and with the Soulfire Drakes being sided in, he's got even more in the pipes.
Yeah, and I definitely like this attack on the side of Unearthly. 5 damage and 2 Warcry is definitely worth trading in your 2/2. It's a play not like it's a play not a lot of people make.
Hythar made a super brave block there in blocking the 2/2. That could potentially really run afoul for you, but it gets him the torch if he misses it, and then the Rakano Outlaw stays out for harsh rule. And if there isn't a torch, then you get a free unit and you keep a blocker. And now he's holding off on the harsh rule, which I think is also pretty smart. Like he still potentially could take a ridiculous amount of damage here, but I think he's taking some very calculated risks.
Yeah. I think we're going to likely see the Vanquish here from Unearthly. Playing the Soulfire Drake into the 4/4 doesn't really do a lot. So it'll likely be Vanquish and then jam with the 2/3 power creatures. Although I actually think you attack with Oni Ronin too, because what else is it doing with its life? If it lets the champion get past for 3 damage and a Warcry, that's probably as good as it was ever going to be.
Yeah, all the power that Hythar missed, all the tempo that he missed is really coming back to bite him. Even with fairly considered plays for advantage, he's losing too much on tempo. He'll have to block here with the 3/2, and then he'll probably have to harsh roll just not to die.
And yeah, the Unearthly set this up so the Soulfire Drake is lethal. So Unearthly's done all this math. He set it up in a really good way where it's just very unlikely Hythar is able to survive the following turn.
Yep. Another Parliament of Owls is not going to be forthcoming.
Oh, another Drake. I'll play the bigger one for value.
Extra Drakes for extra damage. There you go.
All right, so Unearthly's starting to battle
is-
back, bringing it to 2-1. So he's starting to claw his way out of the hole.
Yeah, looks like it went pretty well for him.
And we guess
Oh.
we'll get to see if players want to evaluate anything going to sideboard or if they just want to jump back in.
Yeah, looked like a pretty solid setup, but he's ready to go. What are we looking at? We've got match point for both of them.
Yeah, they look content to just play it out. Both players just re-challenge. Moving into game 4, still match point for Hythar. Unearthly needs to run off 2 in a row to be crowned tournament champion.
Yeah, all right. So we've got Tinker, Overseer, Rebuke, Crown Watch, Paladin, and Forge Plate. That's a rough hand. Fancy, but the rest of it's not great.
Yeah, this is another slow hand out of the side of Hythar. Unearthly's hand isn't super good, but it's not bad either. It depends upon how much power he draws. Same can be said of Hythar, though.
All right, so we have a Fire Sigil here. Tinker, Overseer comes down, and from there we have... That'll be a little bit of a slow setup again, but Unearthly is maybe not pushing quite as much damage this time, and Hythar doesn't have to deal with the Valkyrie Enforcer or like the sort of odder turn that he had last time around. So he'll be able to play Sandstorm Titan and get a little bit of push.
All right, so we'll see the Parliament come in, threaten to block this 2/2. And he has a bunch of options to get through this. Actually, it's really just Vanquish. But she could Shogun Scepter and offer the trade. I don't love that. I think this Vanquish is important. It does deal with the Sandstorm Titan, which you are concerned about. I think this is actually the right play. Yeah, I agree with this. I have to think about it a little bit more.
Yep. Shogun Scepter swings in, trades with the Parliament of Owls. Good old Parliament of Owls. Soon to be matched by its set 2 counterpart, a Congress of Salamanders.
And now we'll see the Titan come down, and now this Vanquish gets to hit the target you really want to hit. Or maybe Hythar is going to just play the Combo Healer, which I do like, because it both block the 2/1 either way, and this one is not vulnerable to any removal present in Unearthly's deck.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, if he attacks in and then plays a torch, that's really not that bad a deal. You still get an even trade, and you want those torches out of his hand for the quick draw units.
Yep. And now the Silver Familiar is probably going to get a Hammer of Might.
Yeah, I like the use of the Valkyrie Enforcer to pop the Aegises. He's continually setting Unearthly up for the overall just like harsh rule, just making it a clear and present threat all the time. And then he can just kind of weigh out with the rest of his stuff and know that harsh rule will back him up if Unearthly gets out of hand.
I think Unearthly's concerned about harsh roll. Obviously, he is contemplating playing Valkyrie, leaving up Protect. But I think if you Hammer of Might the Silvering attack for 4 and they harsh roll, you're okay with that. You got 4 damage, the Warcry 3, you still have the Valkyrie to follow up. I guess this way, if they do harsh roll, you get to protect the Valkyrie and then crack back for a lot.
Sandstorm Titan comes down next, so...
But if this ass is excellent for Unearthly, and now he gets to Vanquish, jam again.
Yeah, that's pretty good stuff. The Rebuke is still in his deck, so he's got good answers to Sandstorm Titan. He's got plenty of ways to push across with flyers, and as long as he can keep these guys on the board, that's actually going to really help him out.
Yep, and Hythar cannot harsh roll because he doesn't have the 5th power. So we're going to see him leave up Desert Marshal instead of playing Great Parliament.
Yeah, and from here, Hammer of Might plus Protect means Unearthly's jamming a lot of extra damage. This is 8. Tough.
Yeah, there's a Marshal can bring one of them down, likely a Silver Familiar, then throw it on a double block. But he'll still have the Valkyrie in play, still has weapons, still in a reasonable shape.
Unearthly chooses not to protect the familiar, keep the single unit in the air against Harsh Rule. Just always have an answer for like the big removal.
There is another Sandstorm Titan, but I guess we're going to see the Rebuke come to shine again.
Yeah, it should be nice to see that Rebuke actually getting something done. Really nice to rebuke the Titans. You do have the general problem after that of like all of your stuff like
or that
not doing enough. But so many silences on an Earthly side. Rebukes plus Valkyrie Enforcers plus Jex. That's a lot of push, and the Sandstorm Titans are just not good enough.
And actually, so 6. I like, yeah, you definitely Valkyrie here. So, because you get to Valkyrie, jam for 4, put them to 12.
And then you get to protect your 6/6 Valkyrie and turn it into a.
It's not exactly lethal. It's like one short if you if they Harsh Roll and you protect on tap plate, but this still puts Hylar in a very bad spot.
Parliament of Owls, flying high in the sky like a tower of giraffes.
I don't think that's what they're called.
A tower of giraffes?
Is that actually what they're called?
It is a tower of giraffes for a group down for.
The more you know.
Da, da, da. We've got the like.
I expect to see Hammer of Might this turn. It makes both able to attack through the 4/4, and both are also big enough that in the face of a Harsh Rule, you can protect one, untap, kill them. So that's what I would expect to see here on the side of an Earthly, and that's what we do see.
For 13, this is a lot of pressure on. They're still just sort of waiting for his 5th power so that he can Harsh Rule. Really not in a great amount of shape. Or here, he might be in just a dramatic amount of trouble. Yeah, looks like he does have the power, so he can swing all in. That'll be a pretty obvious block for an Earthly. He'll take 5, and then the Harsh Rule will go off, leaving a 6/6 on the board to finish Hythar off. So this is probably not going to go very well. Looks like
it doesn't appear that Hythar has another option, though. I think that this is probably the best playing. Yeah, he actually just doesn't have another thing to do. He just has to cross his fingers, pull the trigger in this Harsh Rule. Unfortunately, he will see the Protect, and Unearthly will crack back with the 7/7 Valkyrie. We'll see if he deep forged plates for value.
Yep, looks like he's
of course
got the little bit of extra point there, and then double damage what he needs.
All right, so we get to go to a decisive game 5 here. Unearthly has battled back from an 0-2 deficit all the way to a winner-take-all game 5.
Yeah, so this one's for all the marbles, folks. It's one last round. Got to see if that deep forge plate can once again push across and win the game, or if Cambrai will win out on that.
Yep, and we see Hythar choosing to reevaluate some things in the sideboard. After giving up a 2-game lead, he certainly would try to go back to the drawing board to some extent, look at some stuff. See him bringing out a couple of the more expensive cards. Because we did see that the ways that Hythar lost was games where he had like just nothing and then 4 drops in hand, and then just got run over and wasn't able to really present blockers quickly enough to deal with Unearthly's interactions, just got tempoed out. So anything he can add to help prevent that from happening.
It's pretty rough when you have that situation occurring. Like he certainly does need the earliest stuff that he can pick up. We've got Protects and Rakano Outlaw here for Unearthly. With the double Protects, this hand is actually a little bit more capable than your standard I have a unit plan. He does have to like be a little bit careful because obviously if he plays Rakano Outlaw on 2 and that just gets immediately removed, the Protects don't really help him. But if he manages to turn ahead, that would be a keepable hand. In this case, not so much. Decides to go for something else, try and find himself an actual unit. And Unearthly starting off the game with a pretty mediocre hand. Champion of Glory into a Hammer of Might, hopefully.
Yeah, fortunately for him, Hythar's hand is even more suspect. He
Oh,
needs a
yeah.
lot of help. Although if he draws a
This
Justice
needs a
Source,
lot of love.
like if he draws a Justice Source, his hand is actually good. Like the combo healers do a good job of blocking this Champion of Chaos or Champion of Glory rather.
I'm not 100% certain. Like, the Combo Healers don't really do a whole heck of a lot against Unearthly's deck. They're okay against the Rakano Outlaw, but they don't really stop the Champion of Glory. The health gain is fairly trivial. I'm actually not sure if they're all that good of a card against Hythar.
Well, unfortunately, it looks like this game is just going to come down to Hythar unfortunately not being able to cast anything. This Champion of Glory going the distance. Finding the second threat is probably enough. It's just going to be too much for Hythar to come back from, given lack of power. So you hate to see that type of thing happen, but
A rough redraw into a dramatic final game, but them's the risks. So,
yeah.
as such,
Unearthly
we'll be
is
seeing
our
taking home the championship.
Unearthly, our week 1 Eternal Tournament Series champion. Congratulations to Unearthly. Unfortunate to see Hythar go out on that note. It is a thing that happens. You don't like to see it in Game 5 of the finals, but sometimes you just don't drop power. So, congratulations to Hythar for getting as far as he did. Hopefully, he has better luck in future tournaments. And it's good to see him get as far as he did.
Well, very excellent series of games there. Very glad to see them played, and good to see Unearthly's pretty fascinating Rakano deck take a game. So yeah, looks like we have seen the end of the tournament, and I'm pretty glad to have seen just such a wide variety of interesting decks.
Yeah, Unearthly's deck is a really cool iteration of Rakano. Also, Unearthly qualified for the Invitational with that win. So congratulations to him. We will be seeing him again later in our larger tournaments. And
Invites.
it's just awesome to see someone rewarded for iterating on their pet deck, like someone who's not just going to play like, oh, Big Comrade is the best deck, or oh, Stone Scar is the best deck. Look, Unearthly's been playing Rakano since the game has been out, and he's just been constantly tuning it to whatever the metagame has dictated, and he's just continually had success with it over and over again. And it's one of the great things about Eternal that all of the decks are so closely matched that even though Stone Scar or Combrei might be like a little bit better percentage-wise in the ladder, in a tournament, whatever deck you want to play, you can tune it to beat the given metagame. You can play your pet deck.
Yeah, it's a very exciting format. We love the sideboard format where you can set up a deck basically to base it against a meta and then have a couple of little minor changes to make sure that you can fight against all sorts of other types of decks. So you have a really even matchup, and you always have a chance of winning against everybody if you play your cards right and you measure out your skill and just do your job well. So yeah, it's a really good format, and Earthly certainly took the game with a lot of style. So it's stuff to have.
Yep. So awesome tournament. We will now throw it over to the tournament organizer, Rick Kenner, for some announcements.
Hello, everyone. This is Rick Kenner, your tournament organizer. First, I'd like to congratulate both Hythar and Unearthly for making it to the finals and guaranteeing their place in the Season 4 Invitational at the end of the season. I know it's a bit of a long way off, given that this is week 1, but that is the prize for making it to the top 2. And a special congratulations to Unearthly for taking the win. A couple special notes. I believe he is the only player to have pulled off a full perfect Swiss run. He went 6-0 in the Swiss today into a win in the top 8, making him 9-0 on the day. SMJ did do that in the LCQ for the mid-season major, for the last chance qualifier for the mid-season major, but Unearthly is the first person to do it in an open weekly. He is also now the first player to have won a weekly in every one of our 4 seasons. He had a win in Season 1, Season 2, Season 3, all on Rakano. As Truedawn was just saying, yeah, Unearthly is the Rakano guru, and it shows. Next, I'd like to thank all the players and all the viewers. If it weren't for all of you, we couldn't be doing this. Putting this tournament and stream on every week is great. A special shout out to aReNGee, the founder of aReNGeeternal.com. And I'd also like to thank Miller Tool, our producer. Without both of them, we literally could not be doing this. And also thanks to our myriad graphics and code contributors. And a thanks to our $20 Patreon backers, Chuck Hurst, Sean Kim, Mark McManus Jr., Greg Rouse Emery, Easy, and Chris Kearns. You can find our Patreon at patreon.com/RNGEternal. And a special thanks this week to Twitch user City Garden Games for donating our first bits of being a Twitch affiliate. He donated 100 bits to us earlier in the stream. And finally, thanks to our casters, LocoPojo and Truedawn. Pojo, would you like to tell us about your stream?
Yeah, my stream is on Monday through Friday from 7 p.m. PST to around 10 p.m. PST. We take Wednesdays off, and we occasionally stream on Sundays, and of course, Saturdays for the tournaments when we're not casting. I stream a lot of different types of fancy brews for the most part. I do a lot of drafting. Sometimes we do newbie deck doctor type things where we look at decks and we discuss how to make them better or just show them off and play around with them on stream. We do a lot of really fun stuff. You can also check me out on YouTube if you want to. That's youtube.com/LocoPojo. And of course, I write for aReNGee Eternal, so you can see me there on Fridays. So that's pretty much it for me on that front.
And my name is Truedawn. You can find me at Twitch TV/TruedawnFM. I stream every weekday from 9 a.m. Eastern until around 3 o'clock Eastern time. Play mainly Eternal. Been branching out to other games as well. Just generally card games, Magic, Gwent, Hearthstone. We'll branch out to all that stuff. So if you want to come learn about Eternal, watch me play nonsense decks, casually miss lethal, any of that stuff, be sure to come join us any weekday when we're streaming. I would like to see you there. And I do believe that is going to do it for us here at aReNGee Eternal. Thanks, everyone, for watching. It was an awesome tournament, and we will see you all next week. Have a good day.
Hi, guys.